What if I told you that the conversations we're avoiding at work are actually the ones that could transform our entire workplace culture? Welcome to Talent Talks. We're diving into something that's been weighing on my mind and probably yours too. We're living in this strange time where we have more communication tools than ever, yet somehow we've become afraid to have the conversations that matter most. Emily, our head of success, is joined today by Dr. Natasha Cook, a licensed clinical psychologist who spent 15 years navigating the complex world of federal government work before transitioning into leadership coaching. And here's what struck me about Natasha's story. She left a job she was good at because she felt like she didn't belong. Not because of her skills, but because of the culture. Sound familiar? Today, we're exploring the conversations we're not having about psychological safety, about value alignment, about why cancel culture has made us so afraid of authentic dialogue that we'd rather stay silent than risk saying the wrong thing. We'll talk about how HR has become what Natasha calls the miscellaneous drawer of organizations, and why that's burning people out faster than we can replace them. But here's what I love about this conversation. It's not just about identifying problems. It's about understanding that when we create spaces for real human connection, everything else follows. Culture, performance, retention, even profit. So let's lean into the discomfort and have the conversation we've been avoiding. Let's talk about what it really takes to create workplaces where people don't just survive, but thrive.
Thank you for joining us today on another episode of Talent Talks. I'm your host, Emily Alvarez, and I am very excited to introduce our guest today, Dr. Natasha Cook. She is joining us from beautiful outside of Washington, D.C. Natasha is a licensed clinical psychologist and survived 15 years working for the federal government. And now is a leadership coach and works with organizations and individuals on how to develop out workplace culture surrounding psychological safety and conversations in the workplace, how to really get to the heart of change, leadership, and culture. And so, Natasha, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm very, very excited to get into the topic we have on conversations that we're not having, and why that's affecting and deeply impacting our culture in not so great ways sometimes, and what we can do as a culture, as cultural influence to really drive this in more impactful, positive directions. And so, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. And I am very much looking forward to our conversation today.
Me too. Well, Natasha, I know I introduced a little bit of your background, but tell us a little bit about your history and kind of how you came into becoming a clinical psychologist in this particular vein of culture leadership and coaching alongside working for the federal government, because I know that is a story in and of itself, and you saw and heard and experienced quite a lot that got you up to this point. So tell us a little bit about this experience you had.
Sure. So I actually fell into psychology in a little bit of a backwards way. I wanted to be a pediatrician and just couldn't hack the sciences when I got to college. I found a psych course, took it, loved it, and literally the rest is history. And so over the course of my career, I've worked with children and adolescents. And then later in my career, I retooled to be able to work with adults and spent, as you said, 15 years working with adults and some children here and there within the federal government. Towards the end of my time in the federal government, I realized that I was having a really hard time fitting into the culture. Like I always felt like I just didn't belong there. I had suggestions that many people didn't want to hear. I had ideas that I couldn't get off the ground, and actually got tapped to work on a project looking at the culture of the organization for which I was working at the time, and really spent time pulling my hair out, fighting the system, fighting the culture. And so I decided to leave. I said, this isn't working. My body is breaking down. My family is asking me to do something different. And so I went back into private practice. But thankfully, during my time with the federal government, I was able to take a coaching certification course over about 9 months and do coaching within the organization. And so I said, when I leave here, I'm going to go be a psychologist and I'm going to go be a coach to help people not feel like I feel and not leave jobs that they are good at because
Right.
they don't fit in.
Right. And I think that's a really powerful statement because I think that's a major reason why people um, leave jobs is ultimately what it comes down to is a value misalignment, right?
Hmm.
And then it becomes a culture misalignment because those core values that promote or that allow that person to feel culturally safe to express themselves in the first place, like you're saying, you didn't feel like culturally I fit into this environment.
Right.
Um, that speaks directly to values, right? I don't feel safe in
Absolutely.
this environment. There's a psychological safety breakdown that happens there where I can't express who I truly am because it's not safe here. They're not either going to
Absolutely.
understand me or appreciate me, or maybe there's even some underlying threat there that I'm feeling because of some type of experience I might have had.
Yes.
So tell me what was kind of the besides core values, because I know that usually plays into it, but what would you say would have been generally some of the conflict that comes from some of this
Yeah.
culture misalignment?
Yeah.
Where
So
do
I
you think
think
that stems from?
I think it's people not recognizing that we shift our focus over our careers. So, early in my career, I was very interested in becoming established as a psychologist and having credibility as practicing my craft and doing it well. And then as I moved into supervisor roles and management roles, the shift went from me focusing on me to focusing on others. And I
Right,
truly wanted to know, what did my staff need? How could I best support them? And how do I keep growing as well? So
right,
when we can't shift from this is what's important to me to this is what's important to you, and then what becomes important to us collectively, we get stuck, we get stagnated, and we get in these little pigeonholes, and then we're not communicating properly because all psychologists are just worried about this. And it's like, but I'm not just a psychologist. I'm
right,
also a supervisor. I'm also a manager. I'm also an African American female working
right,
in this institutionalized organization. I'm also
right,
a mother. I'm also a friend, right? There are these different parts of our identities that are not necessarily welcome in spaces all the time, but we don't check it at the door. And it
right.
does color suggestions that we have for projects or programs or resources or personnel. And so I think it's looking at those core values and how they may change over time based on the environment that you're in, but then how they may also evolve and different parts of the identities related to those values really come into play.
Yeah. Do you think though that do you think organizations really understand their own values enough to speak to them? As far as because I think this goes to the
Yeah.
ethos of this podcast, right? Or this episode is, do you think we understand the questions that we are able or allowed to ask? Because that's we might have a culture and or a value
Yeah.
system, and we may want to get to know the culture of our people,
Yeah.
but I think sometimes we get afraid to ask.
I
And
think we Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
think we are. I think people want to take the mission, vision, values of an organization and put it as a one size fit all.
Right,
So to have somebody take a mission statement and say, this means the same thing to everyone, that's just ridiculous. It doesn't mean the same thing to everyone. Same with
right,
the vision, same with the values. And so I think when there's an environment where people are afraid to say, well, time management and valuing my personal time outside of work is something different to me than it is to you. Let's have a conversation about operationally, what are we talking about? So when I tell you I need this time to go do this thing, you know what I'm saying for me specifically, not just sort of writ large as the organization. But then we don't have these conversations because it's like, I don't want to know what's going on in your life. I don't want to hear
right.
about this drama. I'm afraid that if I make an adverse hiring decision or management decision, now you're gonna have a grievance against me because I knew something about you. So it's too messy. Here's what the everyone follows this particular set of rules. And
Right.
yes, we need that as a jumping off point, but then we have to look at those individuals and how those really sort of come down to individual application.
Sure. And I agree completely. And I think what happens sometimes within these organizations around fear, right, around these conversations,
Hmm.
and I've been looking at this a lot lately, is this idea of transparency illusion,
Yeah.
right? Where we have this culture right now in organizations, I think, where we want to say we're transparent about our values and that we have inclusivity and that we have diversity and that we have, we tick all the boxes, right?
Hmm.
But we don't define it.
Right.
We don't define it as what it is, but also what it isn't.
Right.
And so there's a lack of understanding of this is where we can have conversations and where we can't have conversations. But then it also speaks to intention.
Right.
We don't understand the intention behind these things, and we assume there's intention, but we don't know what to call these things that we're talking about. I'll give you a perfect example of this. This isn't related to work, but it's the only thing I can come up with in my head right now is like I saw this a lot during COVID was people were calling like relationships situationships. And I was like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
That could mean something totally different to me than it means to someone else, right? But we don't define what that means. And
Right.
it's kind of the same way in workplaces. Like I've been called a manager before, but like not had manager responsibilities, but then like sort of had manager, like I get in trouble for manager duties, but like I'm not really a manager, but like I'm sort of a manager, but I manage people, but it's like all, you get convoluted. We don't know what it is. So then how do you
Absolutely.
frame a conversation around that, right? So
Yeah.
I think language causes people to freeze in those conversations,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So,
There's that space too, that ego, right? I don't want you to
right,
see me as being incompetent. I'm not
right,
going to ask you, what do you mean when you say manager or supervisor, or I'm not going to ask you those things because everybody should know what that means. But
right,
depending on the organization and the culture, it means something completely different. So
right,
it goes back to that comment earlier you made about psychological safety and people being able to show up and say, here's what I need. I need a
right,
definition. I need
right,
realistic expectations. I need a
right,
conversation.
right. And I think it's even more imperative when we get into a workplace because there is legality involved, right?
Absolutely.
And people can be sued. It can involve people's livelihood. It can involve people's ability to feel safe and do their job effectively. It can
Hmm.
involve, individuals' physical safety at times if there's not compliance put in
Hmm.
place and we don't define what that looks like. You could chop off a body part or, things could happen. But the wake up call, I think, is like what are we getting wrong about this and these difficult conversations, because I think we've touched on it. It's a language problem, right? I think that's the first piece.
Yeah.
We're afraid of being canceled, I think, is a big part of it, right? Cancel culture has played
Yeah.
into this. Let's talk a little bit about cancel culture in the workplace,
Yeah.
because I think this has been a major thing that's come up recently, in the last, like, we'll say 5 years, 10 years or so, where I think you get canceled for pretending to know or pretending not to know.
Hmm.
So, what has this done to people psychologically in the workplace? This cancel culture idea.
Yeah, nobody wants a part of anything. I don't want to
Right.
have a conversation with anyone about anything other than what can be proven on paper and is clearly relevant to what we're talking about. I think where we get in our own way is when we get so emotional. Yes, the psychologist is saying you can be too emotional. We
You
get
can.
so emotional about what somebody said and how they said it. And it's like, okay, let's take a step back. Do we know why this person was feeling the emotions they were? It may have nothing to do with you. You just happen to be a recipient of something that they're bringing with them because they're not managing their stress well. And
Or
then the
their
person,
trauma that they are carrying with them.
right? And then the person says the wrong thing, either because they are stressed out and the part of their brain that allows them to say the right things in a nicer way is not quite online right now.
Right,
Then we take that on and we get so upset and we get so offended. Instead of being able to give empathy at times and say, you know what, it looks like you're having a day. I don't know what you are going through right now. And I would appreciate if you didn't use that kind of language. This is what I prefer if you were talking about this particular kind of thing. So
right,
these conversations have to be two-way in terms of I'm open to receiving what you think you're telling me. And then I want to give it back to you and ask you, is this what we're talking about? Is this
right,
what you are meaning to say? Are you meaning to be offensive or are you truly uneducated in how to speak in this particular area because you
right,
don't identify with that group or that issue or you don't have experience in that way?
right,
So I think the language piece is a huge space, right? I mean, people don't know, do I call you black? Do I call you African American? I know I don't call you Negro. Like, what do I say? It's like, well,
right, right,
ask the person. I prefer African American as opposed to black, but
right.
other people like black. That's a great question to ask. Just
Exactly.
like, is your name Emily or can I call you M? It's
Yeah,
no different. What is your
exactly.
preference, right?
Right.
So I think if we're able to sort of take a step back, take a breath, like bring down the temperature, as people like to say, and
Yeah,
let's focus on what is it that we're actually trying to do here?
right. Well, and it's verifying cultural norms, right? Like these are things that verify and validate someone else
Yes.
and their feelings. And what a lot of companies I think forget is, and I'm going to use a really stupid analogy, but it's like, let's say I want to grow a flower, right? I have to make sure the soil is properly the right soil and that it's aerated properly. And I've got to plant the seed and I've got to tend the seed and I've got to make sure it has the right amount of light and the right atmosphere and the right water and all this stuff. And then
Hmm.
eventually it grows, right? But I've got to keep watering it and I've got to keep tending that flower. And then if I decide to cut that flower, I've got, and I want to grow more, I got to still tend it and tend the buds and do all the things, right? Anybody that's ever had a rose
Correct.
garden knows they don't just like, if you don't
Go.
tend them, they die, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the same thing with company culture. You've got to give the thing time to grow roots and you've got to
Correct.
keep tending it. So what companies do is sometimes when they restructure in their culture, they want to build up their company culture or whatever, which belongs to their people. Their people are their culture. It exists in every one of us has a cultural ecosystem inside of us. If
Yep.
you're nurturing that, you have to do it consistently. And you have to continue to verify those cultural norms. And it's the
Yes.
company's responsibility to encourage putting into place things on the regular that are activities or that are engagement pieces that
Yes.
influence the verification of those cultural norms and the emphasis on bringing out the positives in their people to bring forward and feel safe with those cultural norms to express
Yes.
those in healthy ways in
Yes.
the workplace. But you can't just do it once a quarter or like once every couple of months or once a year at a company barbecue and expect that to fix the other 11 months of the year. It's
Right.
got to be a fairly regular thing. And
It
teams can
does.
do this too. But then you have a correct interpretation or a better interpretation, I should say, of intentions because there's going to be less room for misinterpretation
Right.
if you know each other. I
Right.
mean, it's
And
kind of not rocket science.
I think this is an occasion where it's important to look at the process and the outcome. So
Right,
often we pit the two against each other. But to
right,
your point, if the process is, hey, we're going to do something once a quarter, go and figure it out, and then we'll check back and you give us the marks to see how the outcome was,
right,
that's not going to get us where we want to go. We
Right.
want to look at what have we been doing to make sure that we are putting this cultural, ribbon, weaving it through everything that everybody does
Right.
all the time. How do I talk to you in an email? How do I talk to you in person? How do I talk to you over the
Right.
phone? How do we talk in meetings? How do we present to
Right.
customers or clients? All of that is us
Has to.
bringing the culture with us, not
Yes.
just when we're at a barbecue or at a picnic or, whatever else
Yeah.
we might do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I
And
think
it
it's,
ingrains. Eventually
yeah.
it permeates, right? But we have to have fun together. I think that's kind of the missing piece too, though, isn't it? I mean, we kind of like just don't even know each other.
Yes. And that has gotten worse since the pandemic, right? Because
Yep.
there were people who struggled with the mandated fun, if you will,
Right.
before the pandemic. And then we go off into our own sort of spaces and we become more disconnected. Technology's there to help us connect, but now we're connecting in a different way. And then
Right.
people come back into the workplace, having had many experiences of loss and of trauma and
Right.
of happiness. A lot of people did really well in certain aspects of their lives during the pandemic, and they don't want to talk about that because a lot of people didn't do really well in many aspects in their pandemic.
Right.
So we're even further disconnected about what we feel comfortable talking about and
Right.
why. So what does
Yeah.
it look like? What does it sound like?
Right. Well, and
Right?
I think it was a lot of people during the pandemic, interestingly enough, even though it was physically isolating, I think a lot of people use technology in ways that also created even more isolation from people, even though you would think the technology would have brought us together.
Yeah.
Um, it didn't. It actually served much the opposite purpose because people sat and did like Netflix, did DoorDash, did, use technology in ways that was isolating.
Yeah.
And that was their window to the outside world, right? Was like Facebook and Instagram and Netflix and watching TV. And there was not really any type of constructive human interaction. So it wasn't like we had people in droves going out and taking like classes to like
Yeah.
better themselves or do things like that. It was more like, I'm going to take this time to just like relax, which, by the way, I think also speaks to our society. That was
Yes.
as a direct result of people being burned out. I
Absolutely.
don't blame those people that did that, frankly. Like I kept telling my friends, this is not going to end well for you not working or not doing anything or not taking classes. But then I look at like some of my friends that what they did in their profession was
Yeah.
like manual labor or like they had a boss for the last 5 years that was horrible to them and they were burned out.
Yes.
So I get it,
Yes. Yes.
and they couldn't
Yeah.
even have those conversations when they were at work anyway. They weren't really getting into any kind of like feeling like they were connecting to anybody anyway. So it was kind of like, well, what's the point? You know?
Absolutely.
So I get that there was already this underlying depression in our society. And I think
Yeah.
we as a society, to your point earlier, we have become very self-focused. Especially, I think some of the younger generations, which again is our fault because like I'm a Gen X, we shoved one of these in their phone, in their hand from the time they were very young. And so
Yeah.
there's no like question why they're so like into that self-focus because that's what we have
Taught
encouraged.
them. It's what we've
Mhm.
taught them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Even when they're
Yeah.
wrong, we taught them that because if they throw a fit in a restaurant or something, that's what we handed them instead of what my parents did, which was take me outside and say, if you don't
Yeah.
stop, we're going home,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I think what we are looking for is this moderation, right? This
Yes.
concept of, and I'm going to say the word,
That's
and
the
a lot
whole
of people
middle.
hate this word, but balance. And
Yes.
balance doesn't mean 50-50, which I think a lot of people get wrong. It doesn't mean 50% of the time you're doing this and 50% of the time. That's not at all what balance means, in my
Right.
opinion. I don't think
No,
that's
not at all.
correct. I think it's looking at what is important right now that needs my time and attention. So if I'm feeling so crispy around the edges that all I can do is lay on my couch and watch a little bit of Netflix, then I do that, but I do that within a specific time constraint because I have to
Right,
get up and feed myself and my family. I need to walk my dogs.
right,
I need to move my body. I need to
right,
send a work email, right?
right,
So it's being able to ask yourself, what do you need right now, right? I ask my
right,
clients to ask themselves two questions all the time. How am I doing and what do I need? And the how am I doing could be, I'm crispy. I need to sit on my couch and talk to no one. Okay.
right,
So what do I need? I need to just sit here and watch a little TV. I need to sit here and drink a cup of tea. I need to sit
right.
outside and let the sun hit my face. But we can't do that forever, multiple days on end.
Yes.
So
Yep.
when we are in this habit of not knowing when we're going to get it next, I don't know when I'm going to get another vacation. I don't know when I'm going to have another time to have lunch with a girlfriend. I don't know when. We tend to really glom onto that thing and just take it to excess, which I think we are seeing
Right.
a lot of as we are trying to figure out post-COVID work.
Right. Well, and I think there's that there's a fear of like the future. And I don't know that it's so much what's going to happen in the future, it's what's not going to happen in the future. That's the
Mm,
fear. And it's what am I not going to have anymore in the future? That's
right.
the fear, right? Um we we want transparency. When we get it, it terrifies us.
Absolutely.
And so I think it's an interesting dichotomy we've put ourselves into as a society because the more information we seem to have, the more destructive we seem to get with each other.
Well, the news
And
is a perfect example of that.
it
I have
is, it
clients
is.
all the
That's where I was
time
going. Yeah.
who are like,
Yeah.
I
And
have
coming from
so much
Washington, you're like, it's like in your face because it's literally happening in your backyard. And so
all the time.
we have this like idea of, then companies kind of mirror what's happening, I think, in the outside world, right? It's kind of like, well, we don't want to give too much information because we don't want to panic people.
Hmm.
But at the same time, we want to give them just enough so they feel like they have the picture, but then they
Right.
find out that we didn't give them the whole picture and then they get pissed.
Right.
And then
Now we
we're
have a different
liars.
problem. We have a different
Right.
problem.
We have a
Hmm.
totally different problem to solve. And so I think where we get back to the solving of some of this is looking at boundaries, right? And going back to value alignment. It all really to me goes back to value alignment and
Yeah.
trusting that if our values are in alignment and there's consistency with my leadership, that they're going to make the right decision that's going to impact positively. And it may not feel positive all the time,
Right.
but they have a picture that I may not know about, but I trust them to make the right decision
Right.
because they have all of that information. It comes down to trust, right?
Yes, it does. That's
It does. And
and I
it's,
think to your point, I think people confuse accurate information and happiness.
yes, they
Or
do.
right? They
Yes,
confuse being given tools to make informed decisions and not getting the outcome that you wanted or were hoping for. And those
right,
are two very different things. And I think that there are people who don't have the stress management or emotional regulation management skills to be able to say, I have this information, I asked for it, I don't like it, and I still have to go do my job. I still have to manage
right,
my people. I still have to
right,
execute my responsibilities. Or I've made a decision and the outcome is not what anyone wanted. And this is still a situation we find ourselves in. So let's hold ourselves accountable, make more informed decision to figure out what's the next step that we're going to do here.
right.
And so being able to trust the people that you are following who are leading you comes to that communication being effective and timely. It comes
Yeah,
to psychological safety, being able to ask questions when you're not clear and you don't understand, or you do need additional data, and know that it's going to be acceptable. And being able to say, I made a mistake. This isn't working well, right? Giving that feedback or having that critique or holding people accountable in certain ways, not because we're looking to cut you off at the knees and jettison you out the door, but we are working towards a common endpoint. And if you're
Right.
telling me something has occurred that we're not going to get there, then let's figure out what do we need to do to get there.
Right. And I think it's fair too to say if we are in the middle of restructuring this, right? Um, companies, I don't believe, and I've said this a million times, I don't think as companies like in a lot of cases that we hire correctly in the first place. I think a lot of companies don't, when they interview, they don't talk about their core values. They don't ask the interviewee, these are our core values. What do they mean to you? Where do you see your culture aligning with these values? And you can do that without asking the person about their personal life and about all of that stuff. Like the questions that could get you in legal trouble and all of those things. You can ask that person questions about that because
Yep.
why would you not want to know how that person can like support the culture of your company and your that's
Right.
already existing, and in turn like what they can do or what the values of your company, how they fit into that picture, and do they even
Hmm.
care about those values, or those values
Yeah.
that they hold. I mean, this is like something, because if those things are in alignment and that person um is capable of being upskilled and teachable and has all of the things that you want and is able to trust you and you're able to trust them, then that's a good hire.
Yeah.
But a lot of times we don't hire that way. We hire for credentials.
Yep.
We hire for pedigree. We don't hire for people that we see, that we hear, that we understand, that we have invited to the table because of who they are.
Right.
And that's a huge problem. And I
Right.
don't think it's unfair to say that if you're restructuring, you sit your people down and you have this conversation. And if they're not a fit and they
That's
don't want to
okay.
support the initiative, it's okay to say, this is not a
That's
fit
okay.
anymore.
Absolutely.
You either get on board or you don't. This
Right.
happened to me at one of the last companies I was at. I had to restructure an entire team, and that conversation was had. We are restructuring this team. The train is leaving the station. You can either get on the train with the rest of the team or you can stay behind, but
Hmm.
I can't stop the train.
Right.
And I had 5 people get off that train at the
And that's
same
okay.
time, and that's okay.
That is
I knew it was going to
okay.
happen, and that was okay.
Yeah.
But it happens.
Yes.
And we have to be prepared for that. But it's honest and it's not fair to them and it's not fair to the team, right? It's not fair to them to
Absolutely.
stay on a team that they don't want to be on.
Or expectations they can't meet. So,
Right.
I think another piece of this is when we talk about the culture, I'm thinking specifically about a group that I worked with. Their culture was mission first, everything second. And they meant everything. Like if they were going off to do a specific program or project, they were working 15, 16-hour days. They were not going home. They were like that was the expectation because of what they were doing.
Right.
So you hire somebody into that group and they do not have that same dedication to that specific mission for this time period. That person
Right.
becomes disgruntled. And now their coworkers don't want to work with them because they all are like, yes, this is what we're doing. And I understand what you
Doing so
expect. And I
well.
am happy to do that.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So now we
Yeah.
have a team that worked well together before, but now we have a new person who looks good on paper and under
Right.
different circumstances probably would be very good at doing this job. But
Yeah.
because of the specific culture of what is necessary to execute what they're doing, this person's not a good fit. And for some
Right.
people, they take that as a rejection, like, I'm not good enough. It's like, it has nothing to do with you being good enough. It has to do with a goodness of fit.
Right. Yeah.
Goodness of fit.
Yeah. And I think that comes down to, again, self-introspection and also the understanding that it's again, it's not about fair or unfair. It's
Yeah.
life. And I think
Yeah.
we have a hard time with rejection in general, just as it's human nature because
We
it
don't
does
like,
play into it's insecurity, right? And
and we don't
it
like
usually does
confrontation.
speak to we don't. And it usually does speak to some underlying feeling or some underlying event that's happened
Yeah.
to us in the past that we haven't dealt with the feelings around.
Yeah.
And I think, but it's interesting because I've said this too, that HR specifically, because I do want to talk about how HR can, or how managers and
Yeah.
leadership in general can help with some of these things, because I want to get into the becoming fluent in how to help, right? Because I think there are ways to do this, but with HR and with leadership, HR specifically, I believe over the years, HR has kind of become less of a strategy driven department,
Mm.
and more of a triage unit for companies.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're more of
Yeah.
like a cultural emergency room. They're more of like let's put everything we don't understand how to handle through HR stores. Basically,
Yep.
it's like any kind of initiative we're running for like any sort of new adoption of something. If we need a planning committee for something, any new rules, budgeting,
Yeah.
firing, hiring, retention, KPIs, write-ups, all of that stuff, all of the nitty-gritty personal problems. They become a
Yeah.
therapist. It all goes through HR, right?
It
Problems
does.
between employees, everything goes through HR. I don't think I've ever known an HR person that doesn't know every single thing going on in a company. And sometimes they're the gossip in the company too, a lot of times. But I think with HR, like for they want a seat at the table so badly right now,
Mhm.
but once they get there, I don't think they know what to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they really know how to effectively help employees anymore beyond like the benefits and the stuff like that. But when it comes to driving positive company culture, I
Yeah.
think they've had too much happen to them. Like they're like
Yeah.
shell shocked in a way because
Absolutely.
they're not equipped to deal with this. It's like let's just keep throwing stuff. And now we have a whole new wave of new stuff coming with AI, with
Hmm.
technology, and now all of this political garbage and DEI is under attack. Oh, by the way, DEI is under attack, guys, just so you know.
Yeah.
So
Deal with
there's like
it.
all this stuff. Yeah, deal with this now on top of everything. So HR is like, which is why we have people in HR positions all over the country quitting in droves
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
becoming like
So
consultants, basically.
yeah, they're not getting the support that they need, right? One of
Right,
the great questions on all of these climate surveys is, do you have what you need to do the job?
right.
The answer is no.
No, they
Many
don't.
people don't. And, I think part of how HR has become the miscellaneous drawer, if you will, no disrespect intended.
No, no,
Um,
no, but it's true. I mean, and we're again, this is not, I'm not saying this to be disrespectful either. It's
no,
the
not at
reality.
all.
Yeah,
Not at all. But I
yeah,
absolutely want to take the stand because it's not my career field, right? It's not my profession. So I
right.
don't want
Oh,
to,
for
I don't want
sure.
anyone to
Right,
believe that I'm speaking ill of another profession. I think that there are supervisors, managers, employees who believe that HR knows the law. They know the rules, they know the regs. And so any issue we have, we go to HR and HR will keep us safe.
right.
HR will make sure that we stay on the straight and narrow. And yes, to some
Yeah,
degree, that is part of their job. But to another degree, it is also the supervisors, those managers, and those employees, it's incumbent upon them to
yes,
also understand the situation they find themselves in. So we
yes,
want to come together to be able to speak intelligently. I want to be able to share, here's what's happening, and I'm looking for you to specifically give me this information or this tool
right.
or this technique, not just I'm going to throw my stuff over the fence to you and you make it nice and then throw it back and we're done.
Right,
So I can understand why HR professionals are leaving their profession because it's not a good fit right now. I'm not here to
right,
clean up all the mess,
right. Yeah.
right?
And it's a systemic problem. And to your point, companies really, if they have an HR person that's underwater like this, my feeling is they should be doing bending over backwards. If that HR person is a good HR person, they should be
Yeah.
bending over backwards to do everything they can to retain that person
Yeah.
and provide that person with every resource known to man to bring that person up to speed and
Yeah.
to help them with whatever they need to get their processes up to speed, because it has become in some of these companies an insurmountable task. And
Absolutely.
I was telling somebody this the other day, like it might have been you actually. I don't think I've ever walked into an HR person's office and had it and it doesn't look like a bomb went off. And it's like
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
literal physical, like outward interpretation of like what is
Was,
happening. Like it's
yes.
literally like chaos
Yes.
and not their fault. But they'll have
Right.
like banker boxes of paperwork like stacked all over the place. And it's like
Mm-hmm.
nothing's digitized. It's all a disaster. They've got swag boxes. They've got, I mean, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, holy, how do you even fit in your office? Like
Right.
this would make me a mental person, like to be in here. Like I would need like a padded room after this because literally
Yeah.
it's like the walls are closing
It's
in.
overwhelming. It is
Yeah. But
overwhelming.
like they literally are drowning
Mm-hmm.
in their paperwork and their responsibilities, and no one seems to
Yeah.
like give them that support, and it breaks my heart because these
Yeah.
people literally are the heartbeat of the organization.
100%. And I think it goes to that culture piece again. There are organizations who will say, we care about our people. Our people are everything.
Right,
And that's great as a slogan on a coffee mug until you have people coming to you saying, I am completely overwhelmed. I am underwater. I can't keep up with the cases. I'm being asked to do things that are outside of the scope of my responsibilities and my job. There are other people who don't seem to want to do their job, and yet I'm being asked to do these things. So, to your point of, if a company has an HR person who's overwhelmed and they're good and they're saying, I need help, they should be doing what they can to support that person. They
right.
do. If their
Yeah,
company culture is such that we take care of our people, then
right,
they do. But for those who only say it but don't actually do it, that's where you have those individuals who consistently raise their hand and saying, I am doing more with less and I'm done. I'm burnt out. I cannot physically,
right,
mentally, emotionally do any more, but yet you keep asking and you're not giving me more resources. You're not giving me more supports. What
right,
option does a person have? Self-preservation at some point has to kick in, and that's when people
right,
tender their resignation or retirement.
right. Yeah, and I think it goes both ways too, and I think it's gonna come down to we're going to have people that are going to in their organizations, what it's going to come down to is people are going to literally have to look at C-suite people if they're the stopper in this, which I hate to say this, C-suite, but a lot of times the CEO or whoever it is won't get out of their way, right? They won't get out of their own way. And so there's like a hard stop somewhere in
Yeah.
there that is preventing. But I mean, there are really low lift ways
Hmm.
that you can get the ball rolling with this stuff. It's not like it's hard to make an effort or
Right.
to change some of this stuff overnight. Really, really overnight. I mean, it really is a decision to say,
Yeah.
starting Monday, I'm going to empower these managers to do something. We're going to
Yes.
move some stuff around, right? And it really isn't that difficult. What's funny to me is a lot of the larger corporations that actually have the resources to do this are the ones that
Mhm.
don't do it.
Yeah.
Where the smaller mom and pop businesses, which is like 80% of the country, um, they typically are the ones that take the time to provide
Yeah.
a better environment. And so it's interesting because there's that philosophy of like, oh, I think you and I were talking about this at the beginning when we were kind of warming up, is like there's this philosophy of like, this won't happen to me, this won't happen to
Yeah.
us again. Like,
Yeah.
things won't get bad. Like,
Yeah.
it won't happen to us. We'll be okay. We can make it through. Our culture can suck. It can be terrible. People will just deal with it as long as they're not totally miserable.
Too big
They'll
to
be
fail.
okay. Right. Yep. The higher you climb, the harder you fall. I
Right?
believe Jimmy Cliff said that, right? So, I mean, come on now. Like, it's one of those things like you can afford to do these things and you can afford to ask your people what they would
Well,
like.
there you go. I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest difference between those smaller companies, the mom and pop shops, as you refer to them, and the larger
Yeah.
organizations or corporations, because it's easier to get to the ground level. The ground will tell you what is going on, what they
Yeah.
need, what's working, what's not working. And I think sometimes things get lost in translation when you go to the managers and the middle managers and you kind of keep climbing the ladder. It becomes
Right.
less of what do our people executing the mission need versus what do I think you want to hear on how we're doing what we're doing, taking into account cost and cost savings and automation and sort of all of these things. So in these smaller organizations or companies, they can say, how's it going? How's that program working out for you? How's this system going? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Okay, what can we do to make it better? The larger you get, the more voices you have, the more dissension you have, the more opportunities for values and fit to not be good, right? We talked about this goodness of fit. And so now there's
Yeah.
noise that is distorting the picture, and it's hard to know what is actual good critical feedback on how we can make these tactical changes and what are people just complaining because people like to complain.
Right. Well,
What do we
that's the
do?
thing is I mean, my thing to this is like, I don't know. I think we overcomplicate things sometimes,
Yes.
most of the time, right? And it's like my feeling is, and maybe this is like, maybe I'm being too optimistic, but it's like where there's a will, there's a way,
Mm,
right? And I've worked for some pretty big companies. And I've had the CEO of the company walk into a bunch of, 500 people and sit down and have lunch with us.
yeah.
So I don't know about like the amount of people. My thing is, if you find stuff for your people that generally everybody likes, you're going to be okay. And what I
Mm,
mean by that is like one of the company, well, when I was at Applicant Pro, which I worked still with the original founder,
hmm.
Ryan, we were there, he spent $500,000 a year on housekeeping bonuses for our employees. Now, we were a company of about 70% women,
Yeah.
and most of us were working moms, right? And everybody could earn a housekeeping bonus, right? So this was every month someone could come to your house and clean your house for 2 hours a month.
Nice.
When you've got kids, you're running around, you're doing all these things, right? And we didn't make it hard to earn these bonuses, by the way. Like
Hmm.
usually for my team, it was like, you know, do like something that would get them in the habit of doing something. I would set like a goal like
Yep.
that. And they would earn their housekeeping bonus. And it became like bragging rights to their friends and family. Like, well, my company cleans my house every month,
Hmm.
and like it was like people were like, I want to work there, you
Yeah.
know. Who the hell gets their house cleaned? Like, I've never heard of a company doing that. $500,000 a year.
Yeah.
Come on. Like for
Right.
what we were making, that's nothing. And
Right.
something everybody appreciated. So again, like if you
Yeah.
think about basic human needs, we all need to eat, we all need to clean our houses, we all need to, sleep, we all need self-care, we all need vacation, you can do a travel bonus, travel fund.
Yeah.
We all need certain things, right? To survive, to feel good. Tap
To
into
be
one of those
productive,
things.
to be
Yeah, to be
effective.
productive. Tap into one of those things.
Yeah.
People have a real tough time complaining about that
Yeah.
if it's serving a basic human function or need.
Yeah.
So again, I don't buy this whole like, "Oh, well, people are, it's tough." And like when people in companies say that, I look at them and I'm like, you need to figure out somebody to help you get creative with this. Cause like it's really not that hard if you think about people, humans, humanity. Just be
Yeah.
human.
Well,
Not
and
that
talk
hard.
to your people and talk to
Yeah,
your people, right?
you're human.
Because
You're
you may
humans.
find
Talk to them.
you may find that there are many people in your company that would love the housekeeping bonus, and there are people who are like, I don't need that, but if there were a travel option, I would love that. So now we have
Which is
two
what we did.
options, right?
Which
We
is what
have
we
two
did. Yep.
options.
Yep.
Absolutely, because we spoke to our people, and our people told us what would be helpful and useful for them.
Right.
So it is starting sort of at that level of how are we all similar, and then
Yeah.
drill down to see where we need to be more special and unique, because
Right.
that is what is going to get us across the finish line, as opposed to everybody being special and unique. And then we say, well, nobody can have anything because that's just untenable. We can't do that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's gonna create, this is how we turn departments into uh profit centers.
Hmm. Hmm.
What's interesting about this is we're talking about this all started with conversations you can't have at work, right? These are the conversations you need to have at work, folks. And this is exactly why, because this will turn, I mean, we're talking about humanity, right? This is important for
Hmm.
people. But if you're a CFO listening to this and you want like numbers, human metrics, well, who cares about that? Let's talk people, like number metrics, right? There's a direct correlation between people being happy in their workplace and company profit
Yes, there
and
is.
customer success and like your product success. And
Yes.
like if your people in your company are happy and healthy and love working there, your client success goes up, your product success goes up, everything goes up.
Hmm.
So like the ROI goes up with cultural fluency, with trust, with retention, with people that actually give a damn about their people. So like, why would you not do these things?
Right.
It's just crazy. So
Right.
to end, because I know we're getting up against the clock, but Natasha, tell me what gives you hope about the future of work when we have these types of conversations, especially?
Yeah. I think it's the fact that there are people who want to hear these conversations. They may not want to be a part of them yet because it goes back to I don't have the language, I don't feel competent, which means I'm not confident, and now I'm sort of withdrawing, or I have my guard up, right, to be defensive. But the more of these conversations that we can have in different industries, different settings, different professions, the more people hear it, the more it becomes common. The vocabulary starts to seep into our consciousness, and we're able to speak more confidently and competently, and we know where to go to utilize our resources that can help us. I think that's the piece that is so just under discussed. You don't have to know everything, but you do need to know the resources that can help you. So understanding that podcasts like this are resources, people on podcasts like this are resources.
Absolutely.
These are people who would be more than happy to have a conversation or recommend a book title or send you a blog or something like that to help you get your feet underneath you so then you can have these conversations. So I'd say that's probably a big piece. But then as much as the younger generations, and I feel old, also a Gen Xer saying this, as much as they have their own sort of, specialty pieces about them, I think they are interested in having these conversations because part of what we've also done in raising these younger kids is they've seen multiculturalism, they've seen multinationalism, they've seen so many more things than I think Gen Xers and baby boomers were able to have access to. And so this is part of their reality of like, well,
Yeah.
why isn't this group here? Why didn't we have this food? Why can't we go to this space? And so by them asking those questions when they notice that something is missing, it allows those of us who are more in control of things to say, that's a great question. Let's look into that and do something about it.
Yeah.
So then we're able to sort of get this cycle moving again in a very productive and healthy way.
Yeah, I love that. The younger generations definitely want to know the why.
Hmm.
And I think it's very important that when we give them or we help them research the answer, or we give them an answer, that we are are researching where our answers are coming from too, right?
Absolutely.
We need to be
Absolutely.
diligent in our information and where it comes from, and be diligent in that too, to foster positivity and connection and human growth, right? In the right
Yeah,
direction. So that's beautiful. And I love that. And Dr. Natasha Cook, thank you so much again for joining us in your work on
absolutely.
emotional fluency and leadership clarity. Again, owner of the Experience Coach, and her website is expcoach.com. And you can also follow Dr. Natasha Cook on LinkedIn. But we're super grateful to you again for being here today. And I would love to have you back and maybe continue this type of conversation again, um, because I think, again, these are very timely. And as we continue to go through what we're going through in the workspace and in the world, in our culture, in this country, I think these conversations are sorely needed. So again, I appreciate you being here and being so candid and so lovely. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. It was my pleasure. Thank you for reaching out. And I'm always happy to talk about anything psychologically related, coaching related, and stress, 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 stress. It
Yeah.
is good when it's good, and it's not when it's not. And the important thing is to know when we've crossed that line. So
Right.
I'm happy
Exactly.
to come back and talk about
Awesome.
anything you want to talk about in the future.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
As I reflect on this conversation with Natasha, I keep coming back to something she said that really resonates. You don't have to know everything, but you do need to know the resources that can help you. That's what we're building here at Talent Talks. A resource and a community where we can have these important conversations about the human side of work. Because at the end of the day, all the systems and processes in the world won't matter if we can't create psychological safety for our people. 3 things from today that I hope you'll carry with you. First, that balance doesn't mean 50. 50, it means asking yourself, how am I doing and what do I need right now? Second, that our company values are meaningless unless we can define what they look like in practice and what they don't look like. And third, that the younger generations aren't asking difficult questions to be difficult. They're asking because they've seen more diversity and inclusion than previous generations, and they want to understand the why behind everything. If this conversation resonated with you, I encourage you to share it with someone who might need to hear it. Connect with Dr. Natasha at XCoachCom. She's doing incredible work in leadership coaching and helping organizations create the kind of psychological safety we all deserve. And remember, these conversations we've been avoiding, they're not just nice to have, they're essential for creating workplaces where humans can do their best work. Thanks for tuning into Talent Talks.